Hey, what's up guys? We're coming at you with an epic Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile. And this is a deck profile I've been asked to do quite frequently for a very long time. Today we're doing the updated Harpy Lady deck profile with the support from Legend Duellist 4. Now this set came out in Japan a week or so ago, and because of that I don't have all the cards from that specific set yet, as I wasn't able to get boxes for it. So as a result, we will be running some proxies in this deck, as I like doing physical profiles. This profile also will be running Harpy Conductor, which is coming out in the Link Vrains Pack 2 next year. Keeping that in mind, guys, if you do like this video, remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment below with your favorite card from the new Harpy support. And without any further ado, let's jump into the profile. Starting off, of course, with our monster lineup, we have 3 copies of Harpy Channeler. She counts as Harpy Lady on the field and in the graveyard, like all of our main deck Harpy monsters, with the exception of Dragon and Sisters. You hard once per turn, you can discard any Harpy card you want from your hand, special summon any Harpy you want out from your deck in defense mode, and if you control a Dragon, she jumps up to a level 7. That becomes a lot more relevant than ever before, considering that a lot of the new Harpy cards do have extra effects if you have a level 5 or higher Harpy monster on the field. So you definitely want to run 3 copies of her. The next monster we run 3 of is Harpy Harpist. She does have an ability that when she's normal summoned, you can bounce another winged beast monster you control to your hand to bounce one of your opponent's monsters as well. It is targeting, so it's a little bit iffy. Her main effect, of course, is that in the end phase, if she's in the graveyard, because she was sent there this turn, you can add a level 4 winged beast with 1500 or less attack points from your deck to your hand. So she can add any main deck monster except for herself, Queen, Sisters, and Dragon, so very relevant. Super, really well written effect, because you can use it if she was used for link material, exceed material, or discard cost, or even if she's destroyed by battle. So lots of different ways to abuse her, which is why we still run her at 3. Next up to our 2-ofs, we have 2 copies of Harpy Perfumer. So this is the first of our new Harpy monsters. When she is normal or special summoned, you can add a spell or trap from your deck that specifically lists Harpy Lady Sisters. And if you control a level 5 or higher Harpy monster and use this effect, you can add up to 2 cards with different names that list Harpy Lady Sisters in their card text. That is the one thing that irritates me a little bit about this new support. Not the fact that you need a level 5 or higher Harpy monster, the fact that the card has to list Sisters. Now, it does open up possibilities in the sense that you can search Egotist, but it does limit you in the sense that you can't search your hand trap. But being able to add up to 2 cards just by summoning 1 monster is pretty ridiculous. She's also a decentary second normal summon if you, initial normal summon if you don't open with Channeler. But, running her at 3 was a little bit of a brick because there's not too much we could search for. But I wanted to put Dancer back in the deck, so she did get cut down from 3 to 2. Next up, we have 2 copies of Harpy Oracle, our other new Harpy monster. So her ability is if you control a level 5 or higher Harpy monster, she can be special summoned from your hand. Once per turn, of course, both effects are hard once per turn. If she's normal or special summoned, you can activate her effect, and during the end phase of this turn, add any spell or trap from your graveyard to your hand that lists Harpy Lady Sisters. So she's actually really good to open with as well. If you open with her in Channeler, you're able to normal Channeler, special summon, activate her effect to special summon Perfumer. Perfumer can go ahead and search Egotist. Egotist can go ahead and put Sisters out on the field. Then you can bring out Oracle, and then she can go back, get your Egotist back to your hand. So as well as that, she can also get Roosting, which is a little loop you can do, where you basically get Roosting every turn, which is ridiculous, but that's the kind of endgame you want with this deck. Also, given her effect is very similar to Gravekeeper's Esper, you can use her as link material, exceed material, and you can also battle with her as well. So lots of decent advantage you can get off her. Next up, we have 1 copy of Harpy Dancer. Harpy Dancer is one of my favorite Harpy monsters, and she combos off really well with not only Harpist, but with Conductor herself specifically. So once per turn, you can bounce a wind monster from your field to your hand and then normal summon an extra wind monster. Obviously, you can use that with your field spell to pop 2 spell or traps, as well as you can also use that to bounce multiple monster with your Conductor if you only have, Dancer is the only monster in your hand. So definitely worth running at 1 copy. Next up, guys, we have our Egotist targets. So we have 1 copy of Harpy Lady Sisters and 2 copies of Harpy Lady 1. I'm not running Cyber Harpy in the deck anymore, as I just don't have space for her, which really upsets me. But, with so many new cards, it's really hard to make space for everything. But yeah, you do need to run Sisters in the deck now at 1, because all the new support does require a level 5 or higher Harpy on the field. Sisters can be brought back from your graveyard with Monster Reborn, Split Mirrors of Seduction. The issue is with Sisters, she can't be brought back with Party, which is I think the weakest part about Party, but Party's still ridiculous. But you definitely need to run 1 copy of Sisters and 2 copies of Harpy Lady 1 in the deck now. Sisters can brick you a little bit, considering that, you have to summon her out with Egotist first. Next up, guys, we have 2 copies of Harpy Queen. Harpy Queen is another casualty of the 3-2 cut due to the new cards. Discard her from your hand to add your field spell. She's also a 1900 beat stick. So many ways to get your field spell now, so you don't really need to run her at 3. But you still could if you wanted to. I would always side a 3rd copy and a 3rd field spell just in case you're going up against some really, really heavy back row focused decks and you're just like, yep, destroy your back row, rip you. So at the end of the day, it's up to you, but I like running 2 field spell, 2 queen now. And finally, our last monster is our Harpy's Pet Dragon. Basically, can be summoned out with Channeler, can also be summoned out with our Continuous Spell, and is our biggest main deck monster. Still worth running at 1 copy. Moving on to our spells, guys. First off, we have 2 copies of Harpy's Hunting Ground. It's their field spell. Everyone hates this field spell. When you control when either player normal or special summons Harpy Lady or Harpy Lady Sisters, pop a spell or trap on the field. It is not optional. You must do it. Thankfully, of course, Konami has given us cards that allow us to use this negative effect more to our advantage, and it also pumps our monsters 200 points. I only run 2 copies because the game is not super back row reliant anymore, and the more point is you want to be blowing up your own spell and trap cards more than you want to be blowing up your opponents. Next up, of course, 2 copies of Sign. Sign again got bumped down from 3 to 2, which is a bit of upsetting, but again, Split Mirrors is actually pretty good. So when it's activated, you can search or salvage Elegant Egotist, as we've talked about before, and when it's destroyed, it's into the graveyard during the end, destroyed or sent from hand or field to graveyard. You can add up to 3 Harpy cards with different names from your deck to your hand during the end phase. We do run 2 copies of this because it is a decent pop target for your field spell, and is the only card in your deck that can actually physically search out Featherstorm. And with that, we also play 1 copy of Egotist, just because we don't have as many targets. It's not like summon any Harpy, it's especially some specific Harpies. That's why you only really need it at 1. Next up, 2 copies of Harpy's Feather Roosting, because it's ridiculous. So you can target 3 Harpy or Harpy Lady Sisters in your graveyard, shuffle them back to your deck, and draw 1. And if you control a level 5 or Harpy on the field when you activate this effect, you draw 2 cards. So it's a searchable pot of avarice that is ridiculously recyclable due to Oracle's effect. Next up, guys, 2 copies of Split Mirrors of Seduction. Basically, it is a continuous spell that when your Harpy monster is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon out a different Harpy monster from your deck with an original name. So you can use this to cheat out Dragon, and if it's destroyed by your opponent's card effect, or specifically your Harpy card effect, you can special summon a Harpy monster from your graveyard. So the problem with the card I have is that it doesn't have Harpy in its name, so it's a little bit hard to consistently search out. You can't use it as a discard target for Channeler. It is searchable, though, through your Perfumers and Oracles. And the worst part about it is the Harpy has to be destroyed by battle, but you mainly use it for its pop effects, so you can, special summon out Harpies from your bin, which is pretty cool. Our final 3 spells are Monster Reborn, Upstart Goblin, and 1 Day of Peace. Pretty straightforward there. Moving on to our traps, guys. First off, 3 copies of Harpy's Featherstorm is the only trap card we play 3 copies of because it is ridiculous. If you control a Windwing Beast type monster, negate all activate monster effects your opponent would activate this turn, and if you control a Harpy monster, you can activate it from your hand. I've had many a salty opponent complain about this card because it's ridiculous. Yes, it is very powerful, but remember, it is Harpies, so they needed something good to keep them relevant. You definitely want to run 3 copies of it. Next up, 2 copies of Party. Party's ridiculous, especially if you want to play a Link spam-focused Harpy deck. Discard a card, special summon as many Harpy Ladies from your graveyard as possible. It's basically a free Link 5, just on its own. You can go even higher if you want this card. This card's absolutely ridiculous, because the cost is discard anything, so you can discard a Harpy and then bring out that Harpy that you just discarded. You run 2 because it's not searchable, and it can brick at 3, but it's definitely worth running at 2. 2 copies of Icarus Attack, because Tribute of Wing Beast, destroy 2 cards on the field. Does target, but can destroy any 2 cards, so it's worth running. Then we play 2 copies of Strike, 1 copy of Magical Hats, and 1 copy of Storming. Again, I play against decks that these cards are good against. If you're playing against more competitive style decks, you'd probably change these out maybe for hand traps, or impermanences or stuff like that. But in the end of the day, it's totally up to you. Magical Hats is the troll we use to get signs out on the field a lot faster. Moving on to the extra deck, we play 1 copy of Grapefly. and 2 copies of Conductor for our Link monsters. Again, you can bump the Link count up more if you want to. You can put in a generic Link. I think I actually might eventually. Great Fly pumps all your wind monsters by 500 attack and 400 defense, and lowers all earth monsters attack and defense by 500 and 400 respectively. And if he's destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can add a wind monster from your graveyard to hand. So, and then 2 copies of Conductor. She's a Link 2 with 1900. She's coming out in the Link Vrains Pack 2, basically a Queen retrain. While she's on the field or in the grave, she's counted as Harpy Lady, which is what you want from a Link monster with Harpies. Once per turn, you card once per turn. If your Harpy monster or monsters will be destroyed by your opponent's card effect, you can pop a spell trap you control instead, of course, giving you some plus. And then when a Harpy monster other than herself is bounced to your hand, you can target a special summon monster your opponent controls and bounce that to their hand. So lots of decent plays you can pull off with Conductor. She's a lot better than people think she is, and I'm going to explain why with the Link, with the little bit of a lock you can do with Harpy's Pet Phantasmal Dragon, which we do run at 2 copies, which is 3 level 4 wind monsters. I used to run Dragon at 1 just for flavor. Now you actually want to run him at 2. So whilst he has an overlay unit, your opponent cannot target Harpy monsters you control with effects or attacks, and you can attack your opponent directly, and during each end phase you must attach one. So if you're able to get Pet Phantasmal and Conductor out on the field at the same time, which is not ridiculously hard to do, it's quite easy now considering how fast you can actually spam Harpies out on the field, your opponent's not able to target you with effects or attacks, and if they would play something like a Raigeki or a Mirror Force, you just destroy a spell trap you control, and then you get some plus off that anyway instead. Obviously, you are still vulnerable to cards like Evenly Matched and Cyber Elderton, and I actually got Elderton's, which was pretty hilarious. It was literally the only out they had. You can also Kaiju, but still, it's a nice little effect, nice little lock that you have, which is pretty cool, which is why I run Dragon at 2, also because these guys have a beat stick. 2 copies of Xeraphon, because Xeraphon is always relevant to play in Wing Beast decks, considering that Konami is continuously increasing the size of the field by adding more zones. I know they got rid of the Pendulum zones, but in the Pendulum format, she was ridiculous because you had Pendulum monsters you could negate as well. But now you can negate Link monsters' effects. She doesn't target, she negates everything on your opponent's field, and then for every face-up card on the field other than herself, she gains 300 until your next standby phase. So even if she dies, your opponent's stuff is still negated. And the fact that you play so many continuous spells in the deck now, as well as your field spell, it's ridiculous how high this monster can actually get. She can brick you a little bit in the sense that she's water, not wind, so she's a bit hard to get rid of. So it's another reason to run a generic Link if you really want to. But again, that's up to you. It's 1 copy of Chidori. Chidori is something you could swap for the generic Link if you want like an Underclock Taker, but I don't really like running Underclock Taker because it's not really on theme. Chidori is 2 level 4 monsters. When it's Xyz summoned, you can target a set card your opponent controls, chuck it on their deck, and you can detach one to target face-up card your opponent controls, put it on the top of their deck. More relevant for extra deck monsters that don't have targeting protection for the face-up effect, and destroying pesky back row if you don't have a field spell is really good for its negative effect. It's very situational now that we have to be very careful with what extra deck monsters we put on the field, but it's still, a decent one-off if you really want to. 1 copy of Babushka because it's troll and can lock your opponent down for a few turns as long as they're not going to make a Link monster. Pretty cool. Hard to get rid of if you basically make this on turn 1 and you'll set up on turn 2, which is normally what happens when I play this deck. So again, another benefit. Actually, probably but you shuffle your opponent for 3 turns, so making yourself a decent hand. So that's pretty cool. 1 copy of Castel, the Skyblaster Musketeer, because detach 2, shuffle a card on your opponent's field back to deck, always relevant, especially given the fact that he's a Windwing Beast, so he is a valid activation target for your Featherstorm if you set it, which is some things that a lot of people forget in this deck. We also play the Utopia package, going to Lightning, because it's a 5k beat stick if you really need to close out games, especially because we don't run Filet and X-Pike in the deck anymore. And finally, Big Eye and Tornado Dragon, just Big Eye for the memes. I mean, Big Eye, again, another target you could swap out for another Link if you wanted to. And Tornado Dragon, because it can pop spells and traps, and can pop your sign if you really need to, which is why I play it in all the builds. But anyway, guys, that is just my version of the new deck. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked it, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below with your favorite new Harpy card, as well as that if you want more detail on the new Harpy cards, particularly the trap, which I don't run in the deck, you can check out my various videos I've done on them up on the channel. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you for my next profile.